So hi guys, in this video we will take a look at various constitutional bodies like Election Commission, Finance Commission, UPSC, State Public Service Commission, which is SPSC. This is the first part of our two-part constitutional bodies series. The next part will be released soon, so you guys stay tuned. So before we begin, let me tell you that basically there are two types of bodies in our political structure. The first one, they are called as constitutional bodies. So the constitutional bodies are those which are mentioned in the constitution, and these are the bodies which we are going to study today. So the second type of the bodies which are present are the non-constitutional bodies or extra constitutional bodies. These are the bodies which are not mentioned in the constitution but are created due to the statutes passed by the legislature or by executive resolution. So the first constitutional body which we are going to see is the Election Commission. As you can see, Article 324 mentions Election Commission, and Election Commission has the power of superintendence, direction and control of election. So remember guys, Election Commission directs or controls the election of only four categories, which are the elections of Parliament, state legislature, the office of President and Vice President. So if UPSC or any other exam asks you whether the Election Commission of India undertakes the election of panchayat or municipality, so the answer is no. Supreme Court supervises or controls the election of only these four bodies. If there is any other option, you can just discard that option. So moving ahead, we find the composition of Election Commission of India. So Election Commission is composed of a Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners. But how many election commissioners are there? It is decided by the President. Constitution does not mention a specific number of how many election commissioners should be there. It leaves it to the discretion of the President. And we find the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner, the appointment of election commissioners, others, the appointment of regional commissioners, which are there to help the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioner to perform their duties. They are appointed by the President of India. Now, we also find the appointment of regional commissioners is undertaken by the President after he has consulted with the Election Commission of India. So again, moving ahead, the election commissioner, he cannot be removed from his office except in a manner and on the same grounds as a judge of Supreme Court is removed. So guys, let me tell you how the removal of a Supreme Court judge takes place. This will help us understand how the removal process of an election commissioner is also undertaken. So to remove a Supreme Court judge, there is only one ground which is provided in the constitutional, which is proved misbehavior. Remember this term guys, proved misbehavior. So what happens in the beginning is that a motion has to be introduced in the either of the houses of the Parliament. So if a motion for the removal of a Supreme Court judge is brought in the Lok Sabha, it has to be supported by 100 members, and if it is brought in the Rajya Sabha, it is to be supported by 50 members of the Rajya Sabha. Okay, after this motion is supported this required number, the chairman or the speaker, they have the discretion to accept or admit the motion, or they can reject the motion. Okay, after this motion has been passed, the House of the Parliament, it creates a 3-member body which is created to investigate or look into the matter on which the Supreme Court judge is being tried. Okay, so these 3 members, who are these 3 members? First one is the Chief Justice of India, second one is the Chief Justice of any High Court, and the third one is an eminent jurist. Okay, so if this 3-member committee finds that the Supreme Court judge is guilty of misbehavior, then both the houses have to pass a motion for this removal by special majority, which is the two-third majority of the people or members which are present and voting. After this, after this motion has been passed by both the houses with two-third majority, then only motion it goes for the president's assent, and after that the president gives his assent to this motion and the Supreme Court judge is removed. And this is the exact same procedure with which a chief election commissioner or any other election commissioner is to be removed. Okay, moving ahead, we find that currently we have 1+2 system, which means that there is one chief election commissioner and there are two election commissioners. And you must remember that all these three election commissioners, they are at a similar level. So only the title of the post is chief election commissioner, but all the emoluments, allowances are equal for all of them. We again find that the salary of election commissioner or chief election commissioner is equal to the salary of a Supreme Court judge, and we have already seen that removal of chief election commissioner is equal to the removal of Supreme Court judge. Okay, so if any other election commissioner or a regional commissioner is to be removed, then they cannot be removed except on the recommendation of the chief election commissioner, which means that first they have to the recommendation should come from the chief election commissioner, saying that they should remove the specific election commissioner or regional commissioner. Now, the age and tenure of the election commissioner or chief election commissioner is 65 or 6 years, which translates into, if the chief election commissioner reaches the age of 65 years before he completes the 6-year tenure, still he will have to retire. And if the chief election commissioner has not achieved the age of 65 years but still has completed 6 years as a chief election commissioner, then again he has to retire. So this 65 or 6 years, it loosely translates to whichever comes earlier. So if he becomes 65 years old earlier, then still he has to retire, and if he completes a 6-year tenure earlier, still he has to retire. And you may think that what is the qualification for an election commissioner? So the constitution has not provided any qualification for the members of the election commission of India. Now we will see what are the powers and functions of election commission of India. So as we all know that powers or the functions of election commission of India are, first they have to conduct free and fair elections of 4 categories of elections. I have already told you those are the election of president, the election of the president, the election of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the election of MLAs, which is state legislature, and the election of vice president. Okay. Also, the Election Commission of India prepares a list of constituencies. It also changes the constituencies from time to time or periodically, whenever after a specific period of time. This procedure is known as delimitation. The other function of the Election Commission of India is it provides or it allots symbols to the political parties. So moving ahead, the second constitutional body which we are going to look into is UPSC. As you all may know what UPSC is. UPSC stands for Union Public Service Commission, and it is mentioned in Article 315 to Article 323. So we find that the appointment of chairman of UPSC and members of UPSC, it is undertaken by the President of India. UPSC consists of a chairman and other members which are appointed by the President of India. Okay. The strength of the commission is not given in the Constitution of India. Again, like the Election Commission, it is left to the discretion of the President. Usually, the commission consists of 9 to 11 members, including the chairman. The age and tenure. The age and tenure of the members and the chairman of UPSC is same as that of the Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioner of Election Commission of India, which is 65 years of age or 6 years of tenure, whichever is earlier. Again, it is easier to remember these constitutional bodies because most of the details regarding the qualification, regarding the tenure, regarding the composition of these members, the appointment, who does that, it is easier to remember because usually it does not vary that much. So again, in this we find that the Constitution of India has not provided us with qualifications which are required for the commission's membership. Okay, but only one condition is put on by the Constitution of India, is that half of the members of the UPSC. So only one condition is prescribed by the Constitution of India for the membership of UPSC, is that half of the members should have held office under the government of India or under any government of any state government for at least 10 years. So if a person has held a government post for 10 years in the government of India, he is eligible to become a member of the UPSC. President can appoint one of the members of UPSC as an acting chairman when one of the two conditions are satisfied. Either the office of the chairman is vacant, or second, the chairman is unable to perform his functions. Okay. Now we come to the removal of the members and chairman of UPSC. We find that for the removal of the chairman or the member of UPSC, there has to be an inquiry which is to be conducted by the Supreme Court of India. And if Supreme Court finds that chairman or the member of UPSC is guilty, then their decision is binding on the president. Please remember that their decision is binding. Okay. Now we move ahead to the salary of UPSC. We see that the salary of the members and chairman is charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, and we all know that if something is charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, it does not have to be voted upon by the parliament. Okay. Another important aspect of the membership of UPSC is that no further employment. If a person is chairman of UPSC, he is not eligible to be employed at a further position in the government of India. But there is some exception. If a member of UPSC, after his tenure is over, he can either become the chairman of State Public Service Commission, or he can become the chairman of UPSC. If he becomes neither of those, then his further employment is not possible. Okay. So now let's look at what are the various functions of UPSC. So first, all we know, it conducts the examination for all India services, central services. It also conducts the exam for centrally administered territories. Okay. It assists the states in framing operating schemes for joint recruitment of the services. It also serves all the needs or any of the needs on the request of state governor and with the approval of President of India. Okay. It also consults the government, or rather UPSC is consulted by the government on various issues. Like we again see that UPSC is consulted by the government of various issues like the method of recruitment to civil services, the principles which are to be followed in making the appointments to the civil services, disciplinary matters, claim for reimbursement for legal expenses, and so on and so forth. I have highlighted this term here, that when the government consults with the UPSC, this consultation is only directory in nature. It is not binding or mandatory on the government. Okay. Now, one thing which is common in most of these constitutional bodies is that after every year, or all these constitutional bodies, they prepare a report annually, which they present to the President of India. Later, presents this report to both the houses of the parliament. Okay, and the president also attaches a memorandum. This memorandum is also submitted to the both the houses of the parliament. Okay, this memorandum consists of the explanation of why the advice of the commission was not accepted, and all such cases of non acceptance must be approved committee of the union cabinet. An individual ministry or a department has no power to reject the advice of the UPSC. So guys, that is it for this video. I will drop the link of this particular blog in the description box below. So go ahead and check out the blog, and I will see you in the next video of the constitutional bodies part 2. Thank you.